Suho landed directly on the man's face, slamming him into the ground. His shadow soldiers and the sword silently observed from behind. The other hunters stood frozen in shock as the man's face smashed into the cold, hard floor. The hunter glared at Suho, demanding his identity. Suho froze, realizing his body had acted on its own. Trespassing on another guild's territory was bought illegal. He needed a plan. A thought sparked in his mind. Shadows swirled around his face, forming a mask that concealed his identity. He faced the hunters, his cold gaze piercing through the darkness. The masked figure stood before them, an unknown avenger confronting the hyena guild's crimes. The hunters shouted, demanding Suho's identity, their anger flaring. Without warning, they lunged at him, launching an attack. Suho swiftly dodged, his movements fluid and precise. He assessed the situation, recalling his research. The Hyena Guild's members averaged around D rank. Holding back his full strength, he prepared to subdue them without revealing his true daunt power. Suho delivered a powerful punch, sending one hunter crashing into another. Without losing momentum, he followed up with a swift kick, striking two hunters in the face simultaneously. Beru observed the fight in silence, his thoughts filled with admiration. The young monarch had grown so much that those humans called D-rank awakeners were no longer a match for him. Beru's heart swelled with pride, deeply moved by Suho's rapid progress. Suho glanced at the fallen hunters and muttered to himself, realizing how easily he had won. A status window appeared before him. Status window. Name, Sung Suho. Level, 16. Health, 2350. Mana, 235. Strength, 33. Agility, 25. Vitality, 25. Intelligence, 25. Sense, 25. The hunters lay bound on the ground, completely subdued. Suho shook his head, brushing off the brief encounter. Beru observed the scene in admiration, noting the flawless execution of Suho's actions. The civilians expressed their gratitude, asking if Suho was a hunter from the Hunter Association. Suho vaguely affirmed, advising them to seek safety while the situation was handled. As the civilians departed, Suho silently observed them, questioning the Hyena Guild's motive for abducting people. The sword's presence stirred, sensing something nearby. It directed Suho's attention, revealing that the true reason for their arrival lay ahead. Suho opened the storage building, his eyes widening in shock at the sight before him. The cramped space was filled with metal cages. A faint, unsettling energy lingered in the air, catching Beru's attention. His sharp senses detected something unusual hidden within the building. As Suho scanned the cages, his gaze settled on a small puppy trembling inside one of them. Confusion flickered in his eyes as he wondered what twisted purpose the Hyena Guild had for locking up both people and animals in such a place. The sword revealed that the creature was no ordinary puppy. It was a young wolf pup, the descendant of the king of beasts, the monarch of fangs. Suho's eyes widened in disbelief at the revelation. The sword explained that after losing the war against the Shadow Monarch, the Monarch of Fangs had entrusted his surviving descendant to a guardian and evacuated it to the sanctuary. The monarch's wish was not to birth another monarch, but simply to preserve his bloodline from extinction. The faint energy lingering around the pup was a remnant of the Monarch of Fangs, though greatly weakened. If left alone, the creature would surely perish. The sword awaited Suho's decision, placing the young monarch at a crossroads. Suho was about to make his decision when his eyes suddenly widened, sensing an unfamiliar presence. A cold voice echoed from the entrance. The unseen figure remarked how surprising it was to find only one person inside, considering the chaos outside. Suho's sharp gaze shifted toward the voice, cursing under his breath. He hadn't accounted for another enemy. As he turned, his eyes narrowed. What stood before him wasn't a human, but a monster. The monster seethed with contempt, cursing the Hyena Guild for their incompetence and affirming that humans could never be trusted. The sword recognized the creature as Broky, the loyal guard of the Monarch of Fang's descendant. Suho's eyes widened at the revelation. Broky acknowledged the sword, surprised by its survival. The sword reminded Brocky of his duty to protect the descendant, questioning his negligence. Brocky, enraged, dashed toward Suho, accusing him of touching his possession. Suho's thoughts raced. The monster was fast. Brocky, consumed by rage, grabbed the wolf pup and smashed it toward Suho. Suho blocked the attack, but the overwhelming impact sent him crashing through the wall, launching him into the stacked containers nearby. Beru watched with concern as Suho staggered to his feet, blood trickling from his head. The heavy blow had left Suho dazed, his head ringing from the impact. Despite the pain, he steadied himself, brushing off Beru's worried gaze. A notification appeared before Suho. Skill. Resilience has leveled up. His physical defense instantly increased from plus 20% to plus 40%. Beru sensed the faint energy lingering in the air since their arrival, now certain of its origin, Itarim. Suho's eyes widened in shock at the revelation. Beru's gaze fixed on Brocky, declaring that the foreign energy was emanating from the guardian beast itself. Rakan's fang trembled with anger, questioning if Brocky understood the gravity of harming the monarch's descendant. Despite losing the sanctuary, it had struggled to preserve what little power remained. Brocky's cold gaze remained unwavering. He declared that only the strong survive, while the weak exist solely to serve them. It was the law of nature, where the weak become nourishment for the strong. Although the wolf pup was fragile, its noble bloodline made it the perfect source of nourishment. Brocky revealed that he had been periodically consuming the pup's blood to sustain his strength. Rakan's fang seethed with fury, vowing to kill Brocky for his betrayal. Brocky sneered, mocking the powerless blade. He taunted that a half-blood like Rakan's fang could do nothing alone. The death of Rakan was simply proof of his weakness. As the one who survived, Brocky claimed himself the strongest, the most fitting to inherit the title of the next monarch of fangs. Suho's punch shattered Brocky's hand, leaving blood dripping from the beast's wound. Brocky glared at his injury, seething with rage. A shadow soldier swiftly snatched the wolf pup, retreating to safety. Brocky's burning eyes locked onto Suho, his fury intensifying. Gripping the sword grief tightly, Suho's aura flared with unwavering resolve. The bond between Shadow and Fang formed in that moment, a first alliance born from shared hatred. As the vague energy of Itarim lingered in the air, Suho's heart pounded. He had finally found a clue that connected to his father. Brocky's voice rumbled with contempt, his sharp claws flexing. The beast's crimson eyes burned, with murderous intent as he snarled at Suho. A sudden notification flickered before Suho. Quest notice. Urgent quest. Hunt the hyena. Objective. Eliminate the hyena Brocky and secure your safety. Beru held the wolf pup, unable to do anything but watch. The wolf pup trembled in Beru's arms. Suho stood tall, gripping his sword tightly, his sharp gaze locked onto Brocky. The tension in the air was palpable, the weight of the moment settling heavily around them. Just then, a notification appeared before him. Quest arrival. Quest guide. Emergency quest. Hunt the hyenas. Ensure safety by defeating hyena Brocky. Suho observed hyena Brocky with a sharp gaze, acknowledging the name with a hint of curiosity. Questions filled his mind as he analyzed the situation. The existence of a monster, forming a guild while also engaging in human trafficking, was perplexing. There had to be a deeper connection, perhaps even a link to Itarim. The tense atmosphere was suddenly interrupted by the desperate voices of Brocky's tied-up hunters. They pleaded for their leader to free them. One of them cried out, insisting that Suho was no ordinary opponent. Suho refused to stand by and let it happen. Before he could act, Brocky's jaws stretched open, wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Without hesitation, he lunged at the restrained hunters, his predatory instincts taking over as he attacked them mercilessly. Suho's face twisted in shock as he watched the brutal scene unfold. Brocky sneered, his eyes gleaming with disdain. He scoffed at the idea of needing help against an opponent like Suho. To him, those who didn't know their place were nothing more than prey. Suho shouted Brocky's name, gripping his sword tightly as he launched a fierce attack. Brocky, unfazed, raised his claw and effortlessly blocked the strike, his sharp talons clashing against the blade with a piercing screech. Suho's voice rang with anger as he questioned Brocky's ruthless actions, but Brocky only sneered, declaring that the strong had no need for justification. In a flash, Suho was sent flying, through a wall from the sheer force of Brocky's strike. He barely had time to steady himself before noticing another attack coming his way, swiftly dodging just in time. Brocky wasted no time launching another swift attack. Suho raised his sword just in time to block, the force sending vibrations through his arms. Before he could counter, Brocky's claws came slashing down again, forcing Suho to react quickly. Brocky stomped his foot into the ground, unleashing a shockwave that shattered the stone beneath him. As debris scattered, he sensed movement above. Suho had already launched into the air, his sword crackling with energy as he unleashed Storm Slash, a powerful arc slicing downward. Brocky let out a mocking laugh, unfazed by the attack. His confidence radiated as he stood firm, scoffing at the attempt. To him, such an assault was unworthy of the monarch of Fang's relic. Suho drove his sword into Brocky's back, his grip tightening as he pushed forward. Refusing to let up, he commanded his blade to rotate, delivering a devastating blow. Meanwhile, Fang watched in disbelief, his voice filled with anguish. He couldn't understand how Brocky, once loyal and honorable, had become this way. The one who had once sworn allegiance to Sir Raken now stood as something unrecognizable. Brocky stood frozen, confusion clouding his mind as the words echoed within him. Had he truly honored Raken? Doubt crept in, and the image of Raken in his memory shattered like fragile glass. A surge of rage and denial overtook him. With a roar, he seized the sword lodged in his back, yanking it free and hurling it to the ground. The blade struck the stone floor with force, shattering upon impact. Brocky's eyes burned with defiance as he dismissed any respect for Raken, acknowledging that he had only submitted to his strength in the past. The thought of continuing a weak existence was unthinkable. As Suho called out to Fang in concern, Brocky sneered, seizing the opportunity. Without hesitation, he delivered a powerful punch to Suho's stomach, aiming to crush him with sheer force. Pain shot through Suho's body, his bones feeling as if they were on the verge of breaking. However, the thought of his father, possibly fighting his own battles somewhere else at that very moment, reignited his resolve. Suho stood as shadows gathered around his hands, forming into a dark gauntlet. With unwavering force, he struck Brocky with a powerful punch. The impact sent shockwaves through the air, but Suho remained firm. He couldn't collapse here. Not now. Brocky and Suho exchanged powerful blows, their attacks shaking the ground beneath them. Each strike was met with an equally fierce counter. The broken sword lay on the ground, strength leaked from its fragmented body, its essence dissipating into the air. A lingering thought echoed from within. Was this the end? Was it truly being destroyed like this? Even the future of the Fangs now rested entirely on Sung Suho alone. Yet, a desperate will remained, a yearning to fight, a desire to keep going. The wolf pup struggled to stand, its small frame trembling with determination. Observing the scene, the broken sword seemed to resonate with understanding. It recognized the pup as Raken's descendant and realized that Suho's unwavering fighting spirit had ignited something within the young creature. With its remaining strength, the sword made its final decision, to transfer its lingering power to the descendant. The young descendant absorbed the power, its small body now radiating a crimson aura. Meanwhile, Suho was sent flying from Brocky's attack, crashing into the ground with force. Struggling to stand, he felt the weight of his injuries. His health had plummeted from 2,350 to just 21. Doubt crept into his mind as he questioned himself. He had grown stronger, but was it enough to defeat Brocky? Brocky sneered, mocking Suho's resilience. Despite being nothing more than a mere worm, he had managed to hold on for quite some time. Without hesitation, Brocky launched another, powerful attack. Suho, unable to move, felt the weight of exhaustion and pain pressing down on him. Just as the attack was about to land, a blur of motion dashed forward. The young descendant, filled with newfound strength, sank its teeth into Brocky's hand, stopping the strike, meant for Suho. Suho stared in confusion at the young descendant, surprised by its sudden intervention. Brocky, now furious, glared at his bleeding hand where the bite marks were deep. The young wolf stood beside Suho, growling with determination. Then, a notification appeared before Suho. Fang's descendant pays tribute to the player's fighting spirit. Do you want to recruit Fang's descendant as a colleague? Suho's eyes widened as he processed the sudden notification. The Fang's descendant? Was it the same little wolf from earlier? The system's offer lingered before him, presenting the opportunity to recruit the young creature as a colleague. Brocky's eyes flared with fury as he realized the truth. Raken's descendant had absorbed the mana from Raken's fang. Suho quickly pieced it together. Raken's fang had sacrificed itself to protect the young wolf. A sudden notification appeared before him. Do you want to recruit Fang's descendant as a colleague? Without hesitation, Suho made his decision. He had intended to cooperate with Fang from the start, so there was no reason to refuse. He tapped yes. Another notification followed. You have recruited Fang's descendant as a colleague. A surge of foreign memories flowed into Suho's mind, the memories of Raken's descendant. In the vision, Brocky spoke with a heavy tone, addressing the young descendant. He acknowledged their loss in the war against the Shadow Monarch, stating that the world followed, the rule of survival of the fittest. Because they had been defeated, many things would be taken from them. He urged the young one to become strong so that the Fang clan could one day prosper. With an uncharacteristic gentleness, he placed a hand on the descendant's head. Tears welled in the young wolf's eyes as fear gripped its small body. Before it stood Brocky, now kneeling in submission before strange figures, beings with eerie lights shining from their heads. Confusion filled Brocky's voice as he questioned them. He demanded to know what they were and why they had not yet ended him. A woman holding a baby observed him with a calculating gaze. Coldly, she remarked that he seemed like a useful monster. The baby in her arms let out a chilling giggle before speaking. It declared that Brocky was exactly what it needed. With a twisted smile, the woman made her decision. She reached out and embedded a metallic device into Brocky's eye. Pain surged through him as something foreign took hold within him. The young descendant's cries grew louder as it was forced to witness everything. The woman's voice carried a cruel command. From that moment on, Hyena Brocky's duty would be to capture humans alive and deliver them to her. The device implanted in him would grant him greater strength, its potential depending on the one who wielded it. The darkness behind her words was suffocating. The desires they held were beyond twisted. As the memory faded, Suho stood in shock. These people, the ones who had implanted the device into Brocky, were directly connected to Itarim. Realization dawned upon him. The Fang's descendant did not seek revenge against Brocky. It only wanted to stop his rampage. But if this was all tied to a greater plan, then defeating Brocky was the only option. Yet, a grim truth settled in his mind. He lacked the power to win. A notification appeared before Suho. Notice, you have received a quest for recruiting a colleague. Suho's brows furrowed as he read the message. Another message followed immediately. Quest notice. Quest. Monarch's descendants. Objective. Seek out the Monarch's descendants and recruit them as colleagues. Progress. Monarch descendants who have become colleagues. 1 out of 8. As Suho processed the information, another alert appeared. A bond skill is formed due to the bond with the Fang's descendant. A newfound connection surged through him, the presence of his new ally resonating within. The young descendant and the young monarch flared with a powerful aura, their energy surging in unison. Baru observed the phenomenon, noting that the young monarch was undergoing a dight transformation unlike anything that had happened to the king before. Meanwhile, Brocky, filled with frustration and determination, refused to stand idly by. Without hesitation, he launched a devastating attack towards Suho, the force of the blow creating a powerful impact that sent shockwaves through the area. A thick cloud of dust engulfed the battlefield, obscuring everything from view. Amidst the chaos, a notification appeared, an indication that a new skill had been created through the bond with the Fang's descendant. Brocky was momentarily stunned as he felt an unfamiliar grip restraining his arms. A human hand, now bearing sharp, beast-like claws, held him firmly in place. His gaze shifted to the figure before him, and his eyes widened in shock. Suho's appearance had changed completely. His once dark hair had turned a striking white, and an overwhelming aura radiated from his transformed body. A notification suddenly appeared. Bond skill, Beast Possession, Level 1. Mana cost, 1 per second. By allowing the Fang's descendant to dwell within your body, your physical form is enhanced, and your senses sharpened to the level of a beast. Brocky's shock as he realized what had happened. Suho had absorbed the descendant's power. Without hesitation, Brocky launched a fierce attack, his claws tearing through the air. Suho, however, effortlessly dodged the strike. His body felt incredibly light, his movements arched sharper and more precise than ever before. A newfound awareness coursed through him. His senses had become as keen as a beast's, allowing him to instinctively detect the best ways to evade danger. Brocky's expression twisted in disbelief as he took in Suho's transformation. The weak opponent, from moments ago, had become something entirely different. Brocky's mind raced with desperation. He couldn't afford to lose. If he did, everything would be over. With renewed determination, he launched a powerful attack, his claws tearing through the air, with lethal force. Suho stood firm, raising his arms to block the strike. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the battlefield. From a distance, Baru observed the clash, sensing a shift in energy. Suho's mana had increased. Brocky's eyes burned with fury. He didn't understand what had changed, but one thing was certain. He would never accept defeat at the hands of a human. To him, power was dictated by species, and in the end, humans were simply inferior. Suho and Brocky continued exchanging powerful blows, each strike meeting with equal force. Their battle intensified, fists colliding in rapid succession. Mid-combat, Brocky suddenly froze, his eyes widening in shock as he looked down at his hands. Blood dripped from fresh wounds. At that moment, a notification appeared. You have learned a new skill, Unarmed Combat Elovibars. Suho's hands began to glow with a faint light as another notification followed. Skill, Unarmed Combat Lovidal. Passive skill, Mana. Cost, none. You become more skillful in hand-to-hand combat. Attacks using your body will deal 33% additional damage to opponents. Baru seethed with anger, refusing to accept any claim of species superiority before the young monarch. To him, nothing could surpass the species of the Shadow Monarch. Brocky's eyes widened in realization. The kid was the Shadow Monarch's successor. Before he could react, Suho launched a powerful kick mid-air, striking Brocky's head with immense force. His body crashed into the ground, shattering the earth beneath him. Under the midnight sky, the forest remained still, the aftermath of battle lingering in the air. Suho's once white hair faded back to black, his body trembling with exhaustion. His breath was heavy, each inhale and exhale labored from the intense fight. Brocky lay motionless on the ground, his battered form barely stirring. The young descendant stood beside him, gently licking his head, its quiet presence offering a faint sense of comfort. A sudden crack echoed as the crystal embedded in Brocky's eye shattered. His body tensed as memories surged through his mind, flashes of a past long buried. Images of Sir Raken surfaced, and with them, the raw fury of his past failure. The weight of his inability to protect the one he once served pressed against him, rekindling the very reason he had sought strength in the first place. Nearby, Suho remained standing, the young descendant growling softly at his side. The energy of the battle still clung to the air, thick with unspoken tension. Then, a notification appeared. You have defeated Hyena, Brocky. Notice. Level up, level up. The young descendant gazed silently at Brocky's lifeless body, its eyes filled with an emotion beyond words. Suho stood nearby, his gaze shifting between the fallen warrior and the wolf pup beside him. Beru stepped forward, his voice unwavering. The weight of the battle still hung in the air, but his tone carried a quiet pride. Suho's expression darkened as he recalled what he had witnessed. His thoughts lingered on the fragmented memories that had surfaced within him. The vision of the hunters entering Brocky's dungeon, their hands embedding something into his eye, played over and over in his mind. The connection was too strong to ignore. The energy Beru had sensed, the foreign influence that had twisted Brocky, could it truly belong to the Ataram? If so, what purpose did they have in ambushing him? What greater scheme had they set in motion? Beru's tone remained firm as he analyzed the situation. The ones responsible were likely not the Ataram themselves. The outer gods did not act directly. Instead, they manipulated the world through their apostles, interfering with causality from the shadows. Suho processed the information carefully. If the Ataram's apostles were already on Earth, then their influence had spread further than he had anticipated. The uncertainty of their true motives weighed on him. If everything were to end here once again, gathering more information would be crucial. Beru proposed a method to uncover more information, devouring Brocky's corpse. By doing so, he could peer into the fallen warrior's memories, potentially revealing crucial details about the Ataram. Additionally, the act would restore his depleted mana, making it an efficient solution that accomplished two goals at once. Suho expressed surprise at Beru's ability before turning his attention to the young descendant, who looked visibly saddened. Observing its hesitation, Suho gently extended an offer, suggesting there was a place he wanted to show it. The young descendant seemed to contemplate the proposal before responding by licking Suho, a gesture of trust. With a smile, Suho activated his shadow key, opening a portal to a shadow dungeon. Before stepping through, he entrusted Beru with the task at hand. As Suho departed, Beru watched him go, remarking on the young monarch's kindness. Inside the shadow dungeon, Beru observed their surroundings before questioning Suho's decision to come there instead of returning to his usual abode. Suho explained his intention, to provide the Fang's descendant with a place to live. Beru seemed momentarily surprised at the choice of location. However, Suho remained resolute, stating that since he was already allied with Fang, it only made sense to ensure its descendant had both a guardian and a sanctuary. A notification appeared, indicating that the Fang's descendant wished for Suho to give it a name. Suho considered for a moment before settling on a name inspired by its gray fur. Gray. Beru observed the scene, noting how Suho's naming sense bore a striking resemblance to that of his former king. Gray's eyes lit up with excitement as it let out a joyful sound, clearly pleased with the name. Suho declared his intention to transform the forest into the domain of Fang, instructing Gray to make use of it. A notification appeared, confirming that a portion of the Shadow Dungeon had been designated as the domain of Fang. Gray was officially recognized as the master of this newly established domain. Suho inquired about Gray's diet, turning to Beru for answers. Beru speculated that, being of the Fang's lineage, Gray should be capable of consuming other life forms or magical beasts. Satisfied with the response, Suho considered the abundance of remaining magical beasts in the area. With an idea forming, he decided that Gray would be perfect for handling the cleanup. Gray let out a low growl before swiftly attacking a goblin lurking in the shadows. With precise dot movements, it eliminated the threat with ease. Observing Gray's agility, Suho nodded in approval. Now that the situation was settling, he turned his attention to organizing the various items and skills he had acquired during this battle. A notification appeared, signaling the completion of the quest. Quest Reward Notice. You will receive the following rewards. Reward 1, +5 stat points. Reward 2, Title, Wolf Assassin, a title given to a hunter skilled in slaying wolves. All stats are increased by 40% when facing beast-type monsters. Beru explained that even his former king had never possessed such a system. The leveling system applied to Suho had been refined to remove the ill intentions that once existed within it. The original system, developed by the architect, had been designed to forcibly strengthen the human-sung Jinwu, molding him into a suitable vessel for the Shadow Monarch. Once the right process was complete, his soul was meant to be discarded. However, the Shadow Monarch had defied the system's intended purpose, allowing Sung Jinwu to become the new Shadow Monarch by his own will. Now, as a sublime being, Jinwu had no further need for a leveling system. But for Suho, the modified system remained, one that guided him toward recruiting the monarch's descendants as his allies. Suho questioned whether the system was guiding him toward becoming the next Shadow Monarch. Beru, however, refuted the idea. There was only one Shadow Monarch in existence, and that would not change. Instead, the system seemed to be adapting to Suho's unique path, shaping itself to fit his growth. If a previously non-existent feature had been introduced, it was likely designed to aid him in his journey. Suho pondered the purpose of his system as he commanded the status window to appear. As he analyzed the information before him, he finally understood why his class remained undefined. His stats had increased significantly compared to when he was just level 1, desperately fleeing from mistburns. He had gained numerous useful skills, yet he still felt weak. If not for the bond skill with Gray, he would have lost to Brocky. If the quests given by the system were tied to his own desires, then clearing them was his best course of action. By continuing to complete them, he believed he would eventually reunite with his parents. Recalling his recent battle, another thought crossed his mind. Were there any clues about the Iterum hidden within Brocky's memories? Beru confirmed that he had seen the memories Suho mentioned, but none were directly connected to the Itarum apostle who had brainwashed Brocky. Suho sighed, realizing that there were no clear clues after all. However, Beru continued, revealing that there were memories of a human who had created the hyena guild for Brocky and was responsible for taking the kidnapped humans. The name of that guild was Reaper. Suho's eyes narrowed at the mention of a guild. Beru speculated that investigating the Reaper Guild might provide them with more information about the Itarum. A phone vibrated, breaking the silence. A man tapped the screen to answer. On the other end, the caller wasted no time, immediately bringing up a pressing issue. News of the Hyena Guild's downfall had spread, and suspicion had fallen on him. The man on the phone demanded answers, his tone sharp and accusing. The recipient of the call, Lee Min-sung, remained unfazed. He deflected the question with indifference, making light of the situation as if it were insignificant. However, the caller refused to be sidetracked, pressing forward with his accusations. With a growing edge of irritation, Lee Min-sung dismissed the concern. The looming investigation by the association meant little to him. Even if questioned, he knew the power of denial and the influence of well-paid lawyers. The laws were weak, and he was confident that no real consequences would come his way. However, the mention of the association chairman made his expression darken. Though the system was flawed, there were still figures he could not afford to overlook. Before he could respond further, the call ended abruptly. He clenched his teeth in frustration. The arrogance of the man on the other end grated on him, an S-rank hunter who had once been nothing more than a lowly cab driver. With a sudden burst of anger, he hurled his phone across the room, watching as it shattered against the wall. His mind shifted to a more pressing matter. The Hyena Guild's destruction had left many questions, but one stood out: the identity of the person responsible. Survivors spoke of a young hunter clad in a black mask, but tracking them down would be a waste of time. There were bigger priorities at hand. Reaching for a small vial, he examined its contents with a smirk. The hunter stimulant, Star Powder, glowed faintly under the dim light. Once his business with it flourished, his influence would be undeniable. Gray stood over the goblin's corpse, its sharp eyes scanning the remains. Beru observed with approval, recognizing the creature's growing skill in battle. With continued effort, it would soon become a valuable asset to the young monarch. Letting out a low growl, Gray responded instinctively. Beru urged it to consume everything, ensuring no trace was left behind. Suho watched with mild amusement, noting how quickly Gray had adapted. At some point, its .name had even shifted from Gray to Grr without him realizing it. A notification appeared signaling that Gray had accumulated enough experience from hunting .magic beasts. Half of the earned experience would now be transferred to the player. Suho's eyes widened in surprise as he felt his experience increase the moment Gray finished its hunt. He turned to Baru, puzzled. This wasn't something he had encountered before. Was this a new feature of the system? Baru pondered for a moment before responding. While he wasn't entirely certain, he believed it functioned similarly to how the experience gained by shadow soldiers was transferred to his king. Suho considered the implications. It was like a party system in a game. Experience points were not shared, but with a 50% reduction. Even so, the idea of gaining experience automatically without direct combat was groundbreaking. Baru suggested that Gray should continue hunting in the area, seeing it as an efficient way to grow stronger. Just then, a status window appeared before Suho. Daily Quest. Shadow Dungeon Cleaning. Defeat 100 goblins. Defeat 10 goblin decurions. Defeat 1 goblin centurion. Suho examined the quest details. A daily quest that required him to hunt goblins, this system, was beginning to feel more and more like a game. Suho pondered the implications of the quest. If a quest existed, there had to be a reward, and, since it was labeled as a daily quest, did that mean he could claim rewards every single day? Baru observed the situation and concluded that the system likely intended for this entire area to fully integrate into Suho's domain. Suho glanced at the vast expanse before him, realizing the challenge of locating 100 goblins in such a large area. Without hesitation, he summoned his inventory and retrieved an item. Item: Horn Flute. A horn flute used by goblin centurions to call for their subordinates. Examining it, he recalled obtaining it from slaying goblins earlier. A thought crossed his mind. Perhaps this item could make the hunt significantly easier. Suho activated the horn flute, its eerie sound echoing through the shadowy dungeon. Almost instantly, the ground trembled with the sound of countless approaching footsteps. A massive horde of goblins emerged from the darkness, their glowing eyes locked onto him. Suho remained unfazed. This was exactly what he had anticipated. Baru observed the scene with admiration. His young monarch had cleverly used the flute to summon his enemies rather than wasting time searching for them. Suho clenched his fist, channeling raw power into a devastating punch. His burning gaze locked onto a goblin whose face twisted grotesquely from the force of the impact. Without hesitation, he followed up with another strike, his movements precise and lethal. He exhaled, unimpressed. Defeating goblins had lost its thrill, but since he had to eliminate them, in large numbers, efficiency was key. Lifting the horn flute once more, he blew into it, summoning another wave of creatures from the shadows. Then, without pause, he used a second flute, amplifying the call. The ground quaked as a flood of goblins rushed toward him. Suho smirked. This should be enough. Raising his hand, he uttered a single word. Arise. The fallen goblins trembled before their corpses darkened and reformed into shadow soldiers. At his command, Gray and the newly summoned goblin shadows charged into battle, cutting through the relentless horde. A notification appeared. Daily quest completed. Goblins, 107, 100. Goblin decurion, 10, 10. Goblin centurion, 1, 1. Gray was shocked to rewrite as third person only, no dialogue. After 3 hours of relentless hunting, Gray collapsed to the ground, exhausted. A notification appeared, confirming the completion of the daily quest, Shadow Dungeon, cleaning and prompting the reward collection. However, as Suho examined the system, he noticed something unusual. Despite having met the required number of kills, the quest counter continued to increase. A sense of curiosity stirred within him as he analyzed the situation. Rather than stopping, the system seemed to be tracking additional kills beyond the initial goal. Recognizing the potential for a hidden mechanic, Suho decided to push further, determined to uncover whatever secret lay behind the anomaly. Gray, still catching his breath, looked on in shock at Suho's relentless pursuit of the unknown. The quest counter continued to rise beyond its original requirements. Quest notice: Daily quest: Goblins, 200, 100. Goblin Decurion, 20, 10. Goblin Centurion, 2, Tior 1. Gray, utterly drained from the prolonged battle, stood trembling. His once lustrous fur had paled slightly, and his breathing was ragged. A notification appeared before Suho, signaling the completion of a hidden quest. Notice: Hidden quest: Shadow Dungeon. Cleaning has been completed. You have received a reward for completing a quest. Check your reward. As he accepted the completion, a new reward screen emerged. Quest reward notice: You will receive the following rewards. 1. Status recovery. Tuit. Stat points. Plus 3.3. Blessed random box. 4. Cursed random box. A prompt appeared, asking whether to accept all rewards. Suho chose to accept the first reward, and immediately, his body was fully restored. It felt as if he had leveled up, making him realize how useful this effect could be if saved for critical battles. Next, he accepted the stat points, understanding that gaining them would only become more difficult as his level increased. The daily quest rewards were proving to be a reliable way to grow stronger each day. Now he had to make a choice between the two random boxes. Blessed random box grants an item the player wants. Cursed random box grants an item the player needs. Suho pondered the decision. An item he wanted might turn out to be useless, while an item he needed could be something unexpected or even undesirable. Since his wants were too broad at the moment, he decided to trust the system and selected the cursed random box. You have obtained the item, Vulcan's Horn. Suho examined the newly obtained gauntlets with amazement. Having relied on transforming shadow soldiers into weapons, he had been looking for a separate weapon for himself. This was perfect. The gauntlet. The gauntlets boasted a 30% physical damage increase, and he speculated that the value might rise the more demons he hunted. Though they felt slightly heavy, he decided to compensate by investing all his available stat points into strength, increasing it from 35 to 43. With that settled, his next goal was to further enhance his weapon through battle. Suddenly, a new notification appeared. Quest notice: There has been a change in your companion's state. The loyalty of companion. Gray has changed from admiration to fear. Gray, exhausted from relentless hunting, seemed visibly shaken. Beru reminded him that Gray was not a shadow soldier with limitless stamina. Realizing his oversight, Suho decided to call it for the day, mentioning that he had something to take care of outside the dungeon. You have exited the shadow dungeon. Stepping back into the real world, Suho recalled the information he had gathered. The guild associated with the hyena guild was called Reaper. That would be his next target. Beru confirmed the name with a nod. Suho pondered where to begin his investigation when his phone suddenly buzzed. A message flashed across the screen, pleading for his help. Meanwhile, at the Seoul staging field, Danger Zone, Hyung anxiously waited. Today was an important dungeon expedition, but none of the haulers had shown up. Frustration settled in as he suspected they had abandoned their duties for a night of drinking. Upon Suho's arrival, he quickly assessed the situation and decided to assist. Grateful for the help, Hyung handed him a hazmat suit. Unlike miners, who worked safely in cleared areas of the dungeon, haulers had to follow the strike squad closely, removing the corpses of defeated magic beasts. This dangerous task required constant vigilance, as unexpected attacks were always a possibility. Additionally, many of the beasts' bodies contained hazardous materials, spines, venom, or toxic secretions that could cause serious injury. The hazmat suit served as essential protection for those handling the remains in such treacherous conditions. The strike team arrived, surveying the area with displeasure. Their leader immediately noticed the unusually small hauling team and questioned the situation. Hyung, still flustered, quickly explained that the haulers scheduled for the day were all missing. His response was met with frustration. The strike team's leader reprimanded him, reminding him of the contract obligations. The Reaper Guild had been paid a hefty entrance fee, and such negligence was unacceptable. With a sharp warning, he threatened to report them to the Hunter Association if they failed to keep up. A formal complaint would mean they'd never work as haulers again. Hyung, sweating under the pressure, hastily assured the team they would do their best, and pleaded for their trust. The strike team's leader scoffed in frustration, voicing his disdain for irresponsibility before stepping into the dungeon. Hyung, still fuming, leaned toward Suho and whispered, urging him to teach them a lesson using in his summons. Suho remained silent, his sharp gaze fixed on the departing strike team. His mind quickly to analyze their formation: 4 D-rank mage-type hunters, 4 D-rank combat-type dot hunters, and 1 C-rank healer. The one who had shouted moments ago appeared to be the dot healer, and likely the squad leader. His thoughts drifted back to recent events: the cursed random box that had granted him an item he needed, the demon-devouring weapon, Vulcan's horn. Then, there was T.A. Lim Hyung, who had coincidentally contacted him at that exact moment. And finally, the Reaper Guild, which managed this field-type dungeon. None of this felt like mere coincidence. Something felt off. The pieces were aligning too well, as if he had been led here for a reason. A creeping unease settled in his chest. Something dangerous was about to unfold.